The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you today by Draft. Looking for the best fantasy sports site on the planet? Sign up with Draft today. For a limited time only, our listeners will receive $3 matching their first deposit of at least $10. Use promo code DTR or visit draft.com/DTR to sign up now. Draft. Fantasy for the people. Now enjoy the show.
Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. Robert Wood, touchdown. LA. Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. Picked off. Marcus Peters coming off the edge. And Ryan will be wrapped up by Clay Matthews. Everett in stride. Wow.
Franklin Myers gets his hand down there.
Weddle got a hand on it. Did he pick it? He did! Racing down the sideline is Akeem Talib. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown LA! Picked off by John Johnson. Well, it's Dante Fowler who is able to get to breathe. Greg Zerline sends the Rams to the Super Bowl! LA will play for the Lombardi!
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. It's episode 257. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen. Joining me, as always, is not Alexis Kraft. She's actually out today. I don't know if you guys saw the injury report on Twitter. She is out with an illness, and her return is questionable for this later on this week. So we'll have to stay tuned on that. All jokes aside, I do have my partner in crime over here, one of my best friends and my cousin, Adam Grego. If you guys don't know him, he has had plenty of experience with Downtown Rams. He hosted the Downtown Steelers podcast for a bit. He's a huge Steelers fan, so I know what you're thinking right now. What are you doing? You're bringing on the enemy. I disagree here. All right, this is some great content. We got a great show for you guys. Adam, tell us what we're doing. Well, first, tell them about you. Okay, so tell our audience about you, and then let them know who we're having on today.
Yeah, man. So my name is Adam. As you just heard, I am Jake's cousin and a very early adapter of the Downtown Sports Network / Downtown Rams stuff. Me and him kind of started that idea together, and he's obviously crushed it and been killing it ever since. Huge Steelers fan. And I would like to say that though I could never imagine replacing Alexis, I do support the Rams as my second team when they're not playing the Steelers. Yeah. So, I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited to talk to Jake about the Steelers and Rams game coming up. We always talk all the time. We text about football nonstop. It's actually probably unhealthy. And I'm excited for our guest today because we're going to have on Alex Kozora from Steelers Depot, who is a guy that I have followed for I don't even know how long, maybe 5+ years at this point. They're just this big Steelers outlet. They do podcasting and write a bunch of great articles. So I'm excited to have him on and talk to him.
Yeah, no, that's going to be great. Like he said, he's been following them for like 5 years. In a sense, I feel like I've been following them for 5 years because you've always referenced them and they do great work. I'm really excited to have Alex on.
Yep.
And, really excited to do this because I think we haven't done a podcast together in quite a bit. It was actually your podcast, and that was fun. But
yep.
This is right, in our wheelhouse. We, like you said, we talk football a lot. This is a fun game. We actually wanted to go to this game. We wanted to travel this game. Fortunately, we weren't able to swing it. I am lucky that I was able to make the Saints game because it doesn't look like I was. All the stuff I was planning, like going to the Cleveland Browns game and the game against the Steelers, all kind of fell through. But nonetheless, this game will be fun this week, and we're going to get you prepared. We're going to get you your analysis. You're going to know the Steelers like the back of your hand, and you're going to get their thoughts, Steelers fans' thoughts on the Rams. So without further ado, here is Alex Kozora of Steelers Depot. All right, we're joined here by Alex Kozora of Steelers Depot. How's it going, man? Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey guys, I'm doing well. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, coming into this week, I mean, we've talked about having you on, and here it is, Rams Steelers week. Rams are coming off a bye. Steelers are coming off a very impressive win against the Colts. You've seen now, Mason Rudolph kind of, get inserted back into that lineup with ease. Not with ease, but it's taken some time, and now, this is his third game back. How do you see this game going just to start off this show?
It'll be interesting. I think we're in a really big litmus test for this Steelers team. I think the Colts game was part of that because prior to that week, you played some of the best teams in football, whether you're talking New England, San Francisco, Seattle, Baltimore. You've also played some of the worst teams in football in Cincinnati and Miami. So you didn't have a great gauge for how legit the Steelers were, especially in a season where they've really subverted expectations in the sense of past years. Steelers' offense was always the strength and the defense rode sidecar, and this year it's the complete opposite, where the defense is the strength, keeping the score down, stealing possessions, and the offense is trying to find its identity and find itself. So that's really interesting to see, to understand how good this team is and how far they could possibly go. But I think the big thing is just, the red zone battle. Steelers' red zone defense has been strong. They struggled last week against the Colts. The Colts went 3-4. Conversely, the Steelers' red zone offense, which was number one in football last year, historically good. Obviously, you remove Ben from that equation. This is now a bottom 5 red zone offense. So I think that's a telling stat. And then can the Steelers continue to win the takeaway battle? Their last 7 straight games, they lost at week 1 in New England. Every week since then, they have won the turnover battle. So those are the real key stats, and I think that are going to come down to determining the victor in this game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. When I look at these two teams, I see, one is trying to get their defense on track. Like you mentioned, the Steelers look like they have gotten their defense on track. And I think a lot of that has to, it comes down to the fact that you guys were able to acquire the rights of the number 10 overall draft pick and take Devin Bush ahead of the Bengals. I think that was a huge move to push you guys in that direction. I mean, just losing Ryan Shazier, I think, was huge for this defense. I don't think they really ever recovered, but Devin Bush has kind of gotten them back to where, they used to be. And, the acquisition of Steven Nelson in the offseason, I think, has been huge. And then, of course, I love what they have, on the defensive line. You look at, TJ Watt's turning into an all-star type of player. And then, you have Javon Hargrave. I know they lost Tuitt for the year, but, Cam Hayward is obviously great interior. And Bud Dupree, I've been watching some film here with the Steelers. And Bud Dupree, maybe I'm wrong, but it looks like he's having a better season this year. And doesn't look like the guy that everyone was calling a bust.
No, you're right. I'm smiling as you say that because it's so funny to hear praise of Bud Dupree because he's been labeled as a bust. I don't think he was ever a bust, but certainly underwhelmed as a former first-round pick, but turning it on this year. I think health has been honestly the number one factor. I know people point to the contract year and the chance to make money, and this dude's going to get paid in the offseason the way that Zadarius Smith did last year. But Dupree, I think, being healthy and be able to have the ability to convert speed to power is being huge. But you're right, to the larger point about the defense, the Steelers have created the blueprint to make one of the top defenses in football. All you got to do is this. You got to draft a defensive player with your first-round pick in 7 straight years. You got to have 10 first-round picks on your roster. You got to trade up in the first round to get a guy like Devin Bush. You got to trade next year's first-round pick to get a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick. You have to give two of your largest free agent contracts ever, which was Joe Hayden and Steven Nelson, and ta-da, you'll have a good defense. So while I'm happy with how well this defense is playing, they're taking away the football a lot this year, you kind of sit there and say, yeah, you better have a good defense because of all you've invested in. So that investment's finally paying off.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I think it's just been crazy kind of watching them build this defense out. And every year they've been taking these guys who are athletes, right? So we have that with Bud Dupree, super raw guy coming out, but just insane off the charts athlete. Then you go around, you do the same thing. You grab Terrell Edmonds, who is in a very similar vein, athlete, probably not the best X's and O guy. and we just keep pounding and investing into the defense. And lo and behold, I don't know what clicked. Maybe it was the addition of Steven Nelson helping out the secondary. Maybe some coaching responsibilities taken off of Keith Butler's plate, but everything has kind of clicked this one year, which is good because clearly it's the year that we need it. Losing Ben Roethlisberger for the entire season has really kind of put into perspective what life will be like after him. And this defense has really just carried the team overall.
You're right, Adam. The thing that's clicked are the takeaways. This team had 15 takeaways forced all of 2018. They're up to 22 at the midway point this season. Minkah Fitzpatrick obviously been a huge addition, the ball hawk in center field, and he's got 4 picks this year. He's the first Steeler to have 4 picks since Troy in 2010. That was the longest drought of 9 years in NFL history. So it's been the takeaways have been the biggest factor. And now it's about, can the offense, be able to improve and progress? And it's showed some moments the last 2 weeks. I think having the bye week a couple weeks ago allowed this team to reset and kind of re-guide itself under a Mason Rudolph-led team the first 6 weeks of the year. Prior to the bye week, they had 3 quarterbacks. That's obviously a difficult situation, especially when they're young quarterbacks like Mason Rudolph and Devlin Duck Hodges making their first career starts in the NFL. So it's been a work in progress, but like I said at the top, I think this week's a great litmus test because the Rams are a solid team. They're going to pose a lot of challenges for the Steelers on both sides of the football, and I'm really excited to see how the Steelers embrace those challenges.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting test here. The Steelers do get a Rams team that I'm very familiar with, obviously, coming off a bye. They're still trying to kind of figure things out. They're 5-3. They did lose 3 straight, and then they had a couple easy games. I know no game is easy in the NFL, but when you go against the Falcons of 2019 and the Bengals any year, it seems those are pretty easy games. So they were able to use those games, get back on track, head into the bye. Brandon Cooks is out for this game. They are getting back Clay Matthews. What are your thoughts, Alex, on the Rams coming into this game? Because this is in Pittsburgh. The last time these two showed off, it was obviously in St. Louis. It was Todd Gurley's debut, which he literally did nothing because they didn't really want to push him into anything. And then the next week he popped off for 120. And I believe it might have been, it definitely was his debut. And it came down to, not down to the wire, but it was a closer game than, I anticipated. And it came down to Kenny Britt dropping the pass on 4th down for a Steelers win. So in this one, what are you looking at with the Rams? What stands out to you the most heading into this game?
I will admit that I haven't gotten to my Rams tape yet. I was actually going to do that a little bit later tonight, but just knowing what I know, watching them casually and hearing what Mike Tomlin has said, there are a lot of things that concern me about the Rams that are working in their favor. I think the big thing for the Steelers is making sure you shut down that Rams run game. I know Todd Gurley might not be the Gurley of old, and they're managing his work with guys like Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson. I'm a big fan of Henderson, kind of a game breaker. He was at Memphis. But the Steelers' run defense, it's been one weakness for the defense. It has been the run D and their ability to win the trenches. They lost the trenches to the Colts last week. So I know the Rams might not have the ideal rushing attack and the rushing attack that they've had in years past. The O-line has some question marks, but can the Steelers win the line of scrimmage defensively, I think is a big concern. Obviously, the other side of the football with the Rams defensive line against the Steelers offensive line, which has only allowed 8 sacks all season. That'll be a real marquee matchup. But I think the big factors are Mason Rudolph and Juju Smith-Schuster versus guys like Jalen Ramsey and Eric Weddle and all the talent you guys have added in the secondary. You guys aren't strangers to adding talent in the secondary, and the defense, the way that Pittsburgh is, has done the same. So I think the ability for Juju to try to win some of those matchups and Mason Rudolph to play the cat and mouse game with Eric Weddle are going to be really critical in this outcome.
Yeah, I think that the scariest part for me with this game is Mason Rudolph against that secondary. There's just so much talent and so much experience in that secondary that if it gets into any sort of shootout period, or the Steelers run game is just stalling out and they have to go to the air, it's not going to be good. It's going to be ugly. And I think that Wade Phillips' defense will absolutely bait Mason Rudolph into some just bad throws. I know he's been playing it safe for these games that he's been playing, but if they have to get into any sort of shootout, it's going to be a bad time.
That's a valid concern. Wade Phillips against a young quarterback is an advantage for Wade Phillips, a guy that's seen everything and that you could in football and can throw every look at a guy like Mason Rudolph. So you're right. The Steelers can't win a shootout. They're going to have to rely on Rudolph to have to grow up and make some big plays. I like his toughness. I like his poise. But Rudolph's pocket presence has waned the last couple of weeks when you talk about facing a Rams rush that has so many options, whether you're talking Donald, Fowler, Matthews, and all the games and stunts and different looks that Phillips is going to give Rudolph. That does worry me. So if the game comes down to Mason Rudolph and the ball's in his hands, while I've been encouraged by some of the signs he's shown this year, if that's what it is and he's got the chance to make the play, I think the advantage goes to the Rams.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is, maybe not something that you guys would have foreseen coming into the season because it wasn't official yet, but the Rams now have Jalen Ramsey. He is I wouldn't say he took Julio Jones completely out of the game in Atlanta, but he did a nice job of really holding him under 80 yards. And I mean, somebody like that is going to get his opportunity and he's going to make the most of it because he's Julio Jones. But Juju Smith-Schuster isn't half bad either. I mean, he's, one of the better receivers in football, one of the youngest receivers in football. And I fully believe that they're going to try and take him out of the game. Now, if they are able to do this, first I want you to, give your thoughts on if you believe they'll take him out of the game or if he can still pop off and maybe have a couple huge plays here and there with Ramsey on him. And two, I want you to let me know who I should be or who our listeners should be looking at if Juju is taken completely out of this game. Who would be the next option? Because I would look at that as Deontay Johnson, but that would just come from a non-Steelers perspective.
No, you're on the money. And to address the first part of the question, yes, I think Jalen Ramsey's going to do a good job when I'm sure the Rams will make a top effort to take Juju out of the game. I remember all the good matchups that Antonio Brown and Jalen Ramsey had in Jacksonville versus Pittsburgh, and AB won some of those battles, but Juju isn't on AB's level in terms of the on-field play. So, Juju only had 2 catches last week. He's had some mistakes. He had a drop that led to Mason Rudolph interception against the Colts early in the game last week. So long story short, yes, I believe that Juju's going to be bottled up pretty good in this game. That's going to put the onus on guys like Deontay Johnson, who you mentioned, like James Washington coming off his best game ever as a Pittsburgh Steeler, a guy in his second year that needs to continue to ascend. So it'll come down to guys like that, to Johnson, to Washington, to Vance McDonald in the red zone, and then the Steelers throw to their running backs a lot. James Conner's status is still very much up in the air. My guess right now, and that's subject to change, but my guess is he will not play. So, Jalen Samuels will get the nod again. He caught 13 passes last week against the Colts. That is a Steelers record for a running back, and they got a lot of history down in Pittsburgh, so that's pretty remarkable. But it's going to come down to those guys making plays and really yards after the catch. Deontay Johnson's more or less a yak guy, and Jalen Samuels obviously a yak guy. Washington's probably the biggest vertical threat on this team, but the deep ball has been inconsistent with the Steelers offense. So it goes back to being able to get those guys the ball. And as Adam said earlier, you got to be able to run the ball effectively too.
Yeah, I honestly think that Jalen Ramsey's probably going to be taking Juju out of this game. Has he been following receivers around?
Yeah, so he followed Julio around, and then pretty much Andy Dalton was just petrified of throwing to his side of the field. So, I mean, I know everyone is showing that clip of Alex Erickson beating him, but like he said after the game, he's like, I got bored over here. No one was throwing near me. So if that doesn't give you any inclination, I mean, he's definitely going to end up shadowing Juju. And I think you look at Troy Hill, I think he's been playing extremely well. He used to be the Rams fans' scapegoat, but this is somebody that's really come into his own since the Rams traded away Marcus Peters and they traded away Aqib Talib. This is somebody that they signed for 2 years, and again, the fans were not cool with it. He's been burned plenty of times in the past, but when he makes a play, it's not really talked about. Well, this year he's finally showing out, and I mean, he's played well. They've been using Darius Williams, who I'm sure you guys know of. He comes from the Baltimore Ravens. When they went to make that Jimmy Smith move last year to put him back on the roster, they actually waived Darius Williams, trying to sneak him on the practice squad, and the Rams claimed him. So they have him as well as Nickel Roby-Coleman. And it's funny, it's almost as if the two best nickel corners in the game, Nickel Roby-Coleman and Mike Hilton are going at it in this game. I think that's pretty interesting right there. But I got to say, I think that as a Rams fan, anybody that's rooting for the Rams in this game, I think the worst matchup, I think the scariest thing is TJ Watt versus Rob Havenstein. Havenstein has had an issue against the speed rush since I can remember, and that's not his style of play. I think TJ Watt just has so much in his arsenal where I think this could be, I mean, he could change the whole course of this game depending on how well Rob Havenstein is able to block him. But what are your guys' thoughts, with TJ Watt? I mean, I know you guys know TJ Watt very well. He's turning into a star. But is that a matchup that could take over a game?
I think it is. I think TJ Watt can definitely control the run game on that side. And then I think he can tee off on setting up some moves early. He likes to kind of get the linemen setting the outside for the speed rush. And then he likes to counter about halfway through the game and start really taking over. That's when you really start to see him shine. So I think TJ Watt can absolutely take advantage of Havenstein on that side. But I also think that just overall, the essence of this game, if the Steelers want any chance to win, it's going to be that front seven and that pass rush. And I think, Bud Dupree is going to have to keep ascending on his side and take over, and they're both just going to have like a really, really great game.
I agree with Adam. I agree with everything that he said. The Steelers pass rush has been the hallmark of this defense. No defense in football has more sacks over the last 3 years total than the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's not particularly close either. It's going to come down to Hayward and Hargrave, and Dupree versus Whitworth is going to be a great matchup, and I think Watt can dominate against Havenstein as well. But that pass rush has been able to get pressure, it creates turnovers, and it all kind of works together, rush and coverage going together. So that'll be a big factor for this defense, absolutely.
Yeah, the scariest part for me is the Rams run game, getting those linebackers to start biting. And then I watch a lot of Rams games, so I know that Sean McVay loves to set up the play action after having some successful runs. And I am just terrified of seeing Devin Bush bite on those and just have Goff just attack the middle of the field, which I think is going to be, something that the Steelers defense is really going to have to prepare for. And they're going to have to play sound football, stick to their assignments, and not bite on those play actions so hard, because Sean McVay will set those up and he will attack with that.
Or Mark Barron, who's struggled this year. If there's one weakness along the Steelers defense, it's probably the inside linebacker group, because Bush is a rookie still figuring stuff out. Jack Doyle beat him on an angle route last week. When Jack Doyle is making you look silly, that you're a rookie. And Barron, I think, has not played to the level this team has hoped for. And this team's been vulnerable to play action and down the seams against tight ends. So those are, Gerald Everett could have a really good day on Sunday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, see, I'm obviously glad to have you on, because I would have thought, just with the athleticism itself and just his coverage ability, that Devin Bush could be too much for Gerald Everett. Could even take him out of the game. So I like that you're saying that. Now, I talked about on the Rams side, you look at, obviously, Havenstein, I think, is the worst matchup being a Rams fan. For the Steelers, you're worried about the ground game and all of that. But what would you say is the biggest weakness, for the Steelers? Biggest, if you had to pick out a player that you're most concerned with, would you lean towards the former Ram, Mark Barron?
On the defensive side of the football, or any side?
Either side.
Well, for the defense, I definitely would probably say Mark Barron. Offense, I guess it's got to start with your quarterback. Again, not that Rudolph's been terrible, but you have a quarterback making his first set of starts in the NFL. There's been a lot of growing pains. It's transformed this offense. The line is solid. You're still figuring out some of the young receivers, and Deontay Johnson, James Washington. James Conner, if he plays, is obviously a guy that you trust a whole lot, a complete every down caliber kind of back. The tight ends are good with Vance McDonald able to make some plays, but it's all about can Mason Rudolph get those guys the ball. So it's an obvious choice, but you feel, I think someone mentioned it earlier, what life is like without Ben Roethlisberger, and it's been pulling teeth for this offense for the majority of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. It's definitely Mark Barron on defense, and then it's got to be Mason Rudolph on offense, just because, the lack of experience, and he's learning as he goes right now. So it hasn't been, all sunshine and roses.
So we talked about basically matchups and different players and things like that. But Alex, without giving me your score prediction, how do you see this game going? Like how is this going to be more of a a run type of style game? I mean, I know with the weather coming in and everything, I know people believe that this will be more of a ground and pound attack on both sides. But with the questionable status of James Conner, I wouldn't lean that it's going to necessarily be a ground and pound style, because while I am a huge fan of Jalen Samuels, I had a chance to speak with him at the Senior Bowl. I think the world of him as a running back. I think he brings everything to the table. They didn't really hand the ball off to him too much. I mean, he caught 12 passes, I believe, in the Colts game, but it was actually Trey Edmonds. So really interesting there, because I believe he is related to Tremaine and Terrell as well. So, that's pretty cool in itself. But do you see it more of a back and forth type of style game with a lot of, heavy emphasis on the run attack, or do you see, Randy Fitchner kind of, letting Mason Rudolph challenge this defense?
I'm sure obviously any team wants to establish a good ground game as the weather turns cold, and again when you have a young quarterback like Rudolph. But I will say this, it might not always show in the box score, but since the bye week, I mentioned earlier that this team's tried to reset and set a new course under Rudolph. I think the bye week provided that opportunity, and obviously Rudolph getting healthy off the concussion he suffered week 5 against Baltimore, it's allowed this offense to take some more shots downfield, to I think open up and come out of its shell a little bit. You're not seeing the wildcat. You're not seeing some of the real conservative stuff that had been there in the early goings of Rudolph and then Devlin Hodges. So I do think this offense will be able to take some shots. It's trying to grow. Now, will they complete it? Will it work? That's been anyone's guess so far. But I don't think for this offense to succeed, at least, they can't go into a shell and go 3 yards in a cloud of dust to win not only this game, but any games in the remainder of the schedule. They have to open up the offense and put trust in Mason Rudolph to drive the football, and he's got to take advantage of those opportunities and really be able to take some shots and trust his guys to make a play.
Yeah, I definitely hear you there. And I think, Rudolph does deserve some credit. Obviously the concussion was a bummer, and I think, the way he's been able to kind of come back from that and, settle in, win a football game against a really good Colts team. Those are things that you like to see. But I guess before we go into, predictions, if you could give me two players on each side of the ball for the Steelers, or sorry, two players on each side of the ball for the Rams and Steelers, that you believe would be quote unquote players
I think the X factor
of the game
for the Steelers offense is going to be a guy like Deontay Johnson, and can he make enough big plays? Because I really expect Juju to be taken away by Ramsey. You guys traded the farm for Ramsey. He's definitely going to shadow Juju. So Deontay Johnson's been an up and comer. They've kind of limited his snap count because he's played more than this team anticipated that he was going to, but I think he's gonna have to come up big. So I think offensively, I'll go with Deontay Johnson. Defensively, I mean, I'll stick pretty simple there with Minkah Fitzpatrick, and just continues to make plays in the center field, take that part of the field away, and really kind of force throws to the sideline. So I think he's an easy choice, but I think Minkah Fitzpatrick's just been the best safety since Troy, and that's a crazy statement to be able to make. But I think it's undoubtedly true for the Rams on the offensive side of the football. Again, I'm still getting more familiar with them, but I think Gerald Everett, the tight end I mentioned earlier, is that, yes, while I think Devin Bush has had a good year and he's been a playmaker, and those are things the Steelers defense has really needed since losing Ryan Shazier to injury, he has been susceptible to getting beat down the seam. Will Disley scored 2 touchdowns on him back in week 2 with the Seahawks, and Jack Doyle, like I said earlier, beat Bush for a touchdown last week. So while he's still an athlete, being an athlete isn't enough alone to be able to win in the NFL. You got to put it together, and there's still progress, and he's getting better, and I'm really excited about Devin Bush, but there's still a ways to go. And then defensively, I'll pick the safety too, who was the Rams, and Eric Weddle, a veteran guy that has had big plays against Ben Roethlisberger before, so I can't wait to see what he does and how he kind of messes with Mason Rudolph. Rudolph's actually done a nice job being able to move the single eye safety and create the deep ball, but Weddle's that savvy veteran that might not be the athlete that he once was, but a guy that can make plays and certainly worries the heck out of me. And obviously Aaron Donald's a great player, but I'm excited to watch that Aaron Donald versus Marquise Pouncey and David DeCastro matchup too.
Yeah, no, I think you did a nice job of naming those. I would probably go on the Steelers. I'd probably go with Deontay Johnson as well. I also had the pleasure of having him on the show. I don't know what it is with you guys drafting all the guys that have come on this show.
You love our guys, man. Anytime you interview them, I'm like, oh, we're gonna draft him.
It's hilarious, but yeah, Deontay, he's got one of the quickest releases I've seen. For a receiver this year. I think he does a phenomenal job. I think he could get the best of Troy Hill. While Troy Hill's had a good year, and I did talk about him and rave about him a little bit, he is susceptible to getting beat, and Deontay Johnson is a very fast receiver. I think he could beat him over the top for a score, maybe two. So I think he'll definitely be the player of the game on your offensive side of the ball for the Steelers.
Real quick to jump in, the Steelers had a first-round grade on Deontay Johnson. That's how much I like this kid.
I thought he was the best route runner in the draft. I mean,
that's what they said. Yeah.
He's just phenomenal. But no, that's awesome that you bring that up. I do remember when they said that. The defense, I think it's pretty obvious where I'm going to go with this one, just the way I was talking about him, TJ Watt. I do think he is going to wreak havoc. And I still think, the Rams will be able to get it together. But here's the thing. If you're winning your matchup every single time, you're allowing, if you're creating pressure on Jared Goff, you're allowing other guys, even if you can't finish the sack, you now have Jared Goff's attention. Jared Goff now has to, he has to start worrying about you. And then I think that opens up the door for a Bud Dupree or even in the interior with Cam Hayward and Javon Hargrave. So I think, that's definitely something to watch. And I think he'll be, the quote unquote MVP on the Steelers side of the ball for defense. For the Rams, on offense, I think this is going to be a really good game for Todd Gurley. I think Todd Gurley is finally going to be used. I've been saying it over and over and over again. I don't believe he is injured. I think the knee problem is a long-term problem. I think it tells you straight up, look, this guy is not going to be Frank Gore. He's not going to play until he's 36, and that's okay. It's sad, but it's okay. He, however, in the short term is fine. You see the explosion. There will be people over and over again trying to tell you how he has lost a step. He has not lost a step. He has lost his carries, and he has lost his offensive line that won the Built Ford Tough Offensive Line of the Year award last year. That's what he's lost. So I think in this game, a bye coming off the bye, I think they'll use him a lot more. Did hear, McVay mention how he didn't know really how to use these running backs. Malcolm Brown's likely going to play. I think that only opens up the door for Todd Gurley, who's been productive in getting into the end zone. So I think he'll, finish with a couple scores. And then the defensive side of the ball, I'm expecting a big day out of Clay Matthews. He's back. He broke his jaw. Was on fire. He had 6.5 sacks, I believe, to the point until he broke his jaw. And the Rams really need him because I'll tell you right now, they can get all the pressure in the world from Okoronkwo off the bench, Samson Ebukam, Dante Fowler Jr. And Fowler's been finishing, but really he's the only one that's been able to finish. And Clay Matthews has finished plays with sacks. So it's very important. The Rams get a lot of pressure. They haven't gotten the sacks like the Pittsburgh Steelers have. So I think having Clay Matthews back is going to be huge. I think he's going to have a pretty big game and bring Rudolph to the turf a couple of times as well.
Yeah,
awesome.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So real quick prediction, Alex, where are you going with this?
Don't hold me to it, but I'm going to go with the Rams in this one. I think they have a slight edge. I still worry about that Steelers offense, and can the defense really be counted on to make big play after big play, week after week, and keep the score down? As impressive as their streak's been, it's got to end at some point. I think the Rams have a good ground game with Todd Gurley, and they got a good scheme. And again, Sean McVay versus Keith Butler, advantage McVay, advantage Rams.
Yeah, I hear you there. I'm going to go 31-21 Rams. I don't believe the Rams have beaten the Steelers. I could be wrong, in Pittsburgh since 2003 with Mark Bulger. In a rainy game, kind of like the one that we're talking about, Torrey Hall had 174 yards receiving in that one. But yeah, I see it. I think Wade Phillips is going to, feast on the first-year starting quarterback in Mason Rudolph. And I think while the Steelers have enough to keep this thing close, I think Deontay Johnson gets, in for a score and things like that. I just think the Rams have too much going for them. And coming off the bye, I think is really going to help them and boost them with a win in this one. Adam, what's your take?
Yeah, I'm going to go Rams 28, Steelers 20.
All right. Well, there you have it. We have a clean sweep for the Rams. Good luck to your Steelers, boys. Appreciate you coming on, Alex. You guys do great work over at Steelers Depot. My cousin here has been telling me about you guys for 3 years, so it's awesome to finally get you on the show, and kind of surreal as well.
Yeah, we appreciate your time, Alex. Thanks so much.
I'm blushing over here, guys. Thank you guys so much, and good luck on Sunday.
Thanks. Take care, man. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. That was Alex Kozora of Steelers Depot. And I know my cousin over here is freaking excited as hell because he's a huge fan. And,
yes.
that might have been one of your dreams to talk Steelers with Alex. Is it not?
You know what? It actually was. Now that you say it like that, yeah, that was a special moment for me.
Well, I'm glad you could be a part of it because for those of you who suck and you skipped all the way to the end of the interview, what is wrong with you people? I don't understand. But if you did, and you're wondering where Alexis is, she is alive. She is sick. And she has actually gone through multiple flu games, so there will be no, Michael Jordan had his flu game talk, because she's actually gone through multiple. She just is a trooper, and she doesn't let you know how she's actually feeling. So this time she was just too sick to make it. But I have my cousin. Again, if you skipped, then you probably don't know who he is. It's Adam Grego.
Hi, yes, my name is Adam Grego, and I'm a Steelers fan. Nice to meet you.
He's a Steelers fan. So that means we're going to do a segment that I'd like to call "What the Rams Look Like from a Steelers Lens." I know it took me about 2 seconds to come up with that. So if it's stupid, that's whatever. I guess it's stupid. So Adam, you have the floor.
Yes.
I want to know.
Awesome.
I know the audience wants to know what it's like. I mean, keep in mind, he's related to me, so he's my cousin. So I mean, he's watched a lot of Rams games, in the past.
A lot of Rams games.
So
yes.
He has an idea. And Jared Goff was his QB1 in the draft in 2016.
He was. I died on that hill. Jared Goff was my QB1. So the Rams right now, I mean, great team. Love the coach, Sean McVay. I know he's been in some hot water recently just because of the slow start. You could say they got off to, even though they still have a great record, but that's neither here nor there. The Rams right now, to me, need to get back to their defensive form. I think Wade Phillips is a genius. I think he's still kind of putting these pieces together. They just added the best cornerback in the NFL, so that's giving them a boost for sure. I think he's still trying to get these pieces to kind of all mesh together and work well together, but I think once they do, and once they start firing on all cylinders, it's going to be a very, very dangerous defense. I think the offense, it's hit a little bit of a slump this year, but I think they just kind of got off to a slow start. Again, I think they were kind of figuring out their identity. With all the kind of drama with Todd Gurley and whatever's going on there. But I don't think Sean McVay has lost his touch at all. I think they're a very smart team. I think they understand situational football, which helps them win a lot of close games. And I think it's only honestly a matter of time before the offense really starts clicking again and that defense kind of meshes together and they become at least, if not a Super Bowl worthy team, a deep playoff running team. This game scares me for sure. I think that, I already gave my prediction, so I'm not scared to say that I think the Steelers are going to lose this game. I think the Rams are just a good team. They're a well-coached team. They're coming off a bye week. They got some rest. They got an extra week to prepare for this team. They're playing Mason Rudolph, who's, for all intents and purposes, a rookie quarterback. So yeah, I just think they're a good team, and I think they're going to take this one, and I'm not really questioning it at all, unfortunately. However, I would like to say that I do think that the AFC is so kind of weak right now that we can afford to lose this game, luckily, as Steelers fans. So
I'm glad you bring that up because I was going to ask you, what do you feel this is more of a must-win for the Rams, as odd as that sounds? I mean, the Rams are 5-3, and the Ravens are the Steelers are 4-4, and it just seems like, oh, well, they have, fewer wins than the Rams, but it seems to me like this is more of a must-win for the Rams.
I definitely could see why you would say that. You're in a stronger division. The NFC itself is just a stronger conference right now. This, to me, sitting here right now, as a Steelers fan, we started off 1-4. We're at 4-4 right now. We came a long way. And just, to me, this is not a must win. So I also think that's a great point, that the Rams are coming in and they're thinking this is a game they have to have more than the Steelers are coming into it thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to think about. And of course, you have two different goals here. I know a lot of Rams fans have kind of kicked the can and like, okay, NFC West is kind of out. I've gone on record that I disagree with that sentiment. I think the Rams are going 7-1 the rest of the year. I think with the only loss being to the Lamar Jackson-led Ravens.
Sure.
I just think that's going to be a ridiculous matchup, and I don't think you know how to defend that until you see it in person. I mean, you know, because the Steelers are going to have to go up against him, twice a year for the next 10 years. So it's obviously not going to be, fun for you. But I'm a big fan of Lamar Jackson. Obviously, I don't think I've hidden that.
Yeah.
I think what he was able to do against the Patriots, I mean, it's pretty much what I expected. And I think because people are looking at him more like, oh, well, you just prepare for him the way that you would prepare for a Russell Wilson. I just don't think that's the same animal. I think Russell Wilson's very methodical in his running. Lamar Jackson does not care. He will literally run whenever he can. He's also...
Oh, yeah. Lamar's a cheetah. Yeah. He just takes off whenever he feels like it.
Exactly. I mean, and that's not to say, Russell Wilson can't take off. But yeah, that's the only game I really see them losing. And I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they won that game either. That would put them at 12-4, which would be a huge way to close out the year. And it's funny, if they won out and they went 8-0, then they would go to 13-3, which would be the exact opposite of what they were last year. They were 13-3, 8-0 to start, and then they lost 3 in the latter portion of the season. Whereas this one, this would be interesting, where it would kind of be, the flip-flop game. And the thing I find, going back to the whole reason I brought this up is because, again, it all goes back to how you really view the situations. Like, to me, if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm just looking at the wild card at this point. I think the Ravens really, stomped all over that division early on. And I think that win against the Patriots, that kind of, while it was hard for the Steelers fans to root for the Patriots, if they wanted any chance at the division, the Ravens really had to lose that game. And I think that really kind of not only showed that they're here to stay as the division winners this year, unless, the wagon completely falls apart, but they might be the AFC favorite by season's end with that tiebreaker over New England. So that's a really interesting thing there. But then you look at the Rams, and it's like, again, I know a lot of fans are kicking the can, but I don't think the NFC West is over. I think that the Ravens are actually, they have more of a stranglehold of the division, which sounds crazy, with 2 losses than the 49ers do with 0. I think the 49ers, they have a really tough end of the season. I've been saying it, and I've been getting a lot of flack for it, but I think they're going to go 3-5 the rest of the way. I know it's very bold. I think they have an easy win against the Falcons. I think that they're going up against a Rams team you're not going to sweep the Rams, in a season. That I just don't see that happening. And then you go up against Seattle twice, including this upcoming Monday Night Football game, which should be huge. Go up against Arizona again, a team that you had a hard time finishing out the game and barely beat. And that's not to say, oh, you're going up against the Saints and the Packers. And I mean, it's not going to be easy. I don't think they have an easy road at all. And, for that reason, I do think it's not really falling apart, because 3-5, while it looks like it's falling apart, 11-5 is probably good enough to get you a wild card spot. And I think people are really quick to forget, teams that start like this, they don't always end up finishing like this. We saw the Rams last year. They go 8-0. They beat the Packers. They acquired Dante Fowler Jr., and everyone's thinking, wow, they just got Fowler Jr. That's going to really help. They lose the next game to the Saints. And then, it's just one game. And then they go back to LA, for week 11, right before their bye. And they have the unbelievable Monday night performance against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, 54-51. And everyone's thinking, okay, those are the two best teams in the league. And then they can barely beat, the Lions on the road coming off a bye. And then after that, you look in the Eagles game, they drop at home. And then Chicago, where, Goff throws 4 interceptions. They have a chance to win the game. They lose by 9. It was definitely an eye-opener that kind of shows you, like last year, the Rams had that situation and they dropped 3. I mean, to assume that the 49ers are just going to win out or, 100% win the division, I just don't think is the correct assumption. I think that they showed some weaknesses, and I think, Jimmy Garoppolo, in my opinion, isn't a quarterback or hasn't proven to be a quarterback that can take over when need be. I think, he looked great for the first time all year against the Cardinals, but again, it was against the Cardinals. And I think Quan Alexander, losing him for the year, I know people are, quick to throw Dre Greenlaw and, we have Fred Warner. I know who you have. I know your team very well, and it's a talented team. But it's also, you can't be stated enough how important it is to have a leader, how important it is to have leaders, period, in that locker room. And I think Quan does so much as a leader, and he keeps, just everything together. He's the glue guy of that defense. And I think by losing him for the season, you're going to be affected by some, in some way, you're going to be affected by it. And that's kind of how I'm seeing it. I just think, with the combination of the tough road at the end of the year, the fact is that they haven't had a bye since week 4. So they already had their bye. That means all the teams that are coming off the 9, week 10, week 11 buys, they're going to be fresh. The 49ers, albeit they have, done well off a bye before. Seattle went to the Super Bowl, having a week 4 bye. It's happened. But the last 3 times, Adam, that, teams have been in the Super Bowl, I'm going to read this to you because I did some research. And you can take it for however you want, right? But
let's hear it.
Super Bowl 53. The Rams had a week 12 bye, and the Patriots had a week 11 bye. Super Bowl 52.
Okay.
Eagles week 10. Patriots week 9. Falcons week 11. Patriots week 9. You get to Super Bowl 50. Panthers 5. Okay. Broncos 7. Then you go to Super Bowl 49, and that is the first time. Well, the first time, within that, that the last time anyway, that week 4 bye team had made the Super Bowl, and that was the Seahawks against the Patriots. Now, I'm not saying the 49ers can't do it. I'm not saying they can't win the division.
Sure.
But I'm saying the last 3 years, whether, again, take it for what you will, 12, 11, 10, 9, 11, 9. It's like...
Right. So those late buys, they make a difference.
Yeah, I definitely think they do. And I think even more so, in today's game. I think you saw it with the Rams. Sure. They came off the Week 12 bye, and they didn't have Todd Gurley. Like Gurley came back, and he got hurt, and they were able to go out and get CJ Anderson, get him ready. And I feel like just having that bye that late, I'm not saying I recommend having a week 12 bye. I think it's kind of obnoxious if you ask me. But having a later season bye as opposed to having an earlier season bye is like, oh, we played on Thursday night and we don't play until Monday Night Football the next week. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like having that like week off type of thing in the middle. It doesn't feel like a total like bye.
No, and because then you come back from it too, and you're like, we got a long road ahead of us. There's no light at the end of this tunnel. It's definitely mentally different. I just thinking about from a player's perspective, it's probably a lot more intense to have the idea of coming back from your bye and being like, we got a long road ahead of us.
Well, and then the way people will come at you for saying that is, well, the 49ers have proven, 1990 or whatever, they had a week 4 bye and they were fine. Okay, it can happen. But what I'm seeing is that this is going to be a rough road. You have a tough schedule coming up, and you don't have a bye at any point the rest of the way. And so I think because you've already had that week 4 and you don't have a bunch of cakewalk games towards the end of the season, these teams are coming off a bye week 9, week 10, week 11, week 12, and you're going up against them. So they're fresher than you. I think the only cakewalk game, I know people would say Arizona, and the way 49ers fans were talking, it sounded like a lot would say the Rams, which I think would be a mistake, but the Falcons, I mean, that's really the only cakewalk game, and at that point, you might have Matt Ryan back, and, they don't go down without a fight, even with Matt Schaub, as you saw. He threw, what was it, over 400 yards or something? I mean, exactly. Like they don't go down without a fight. They continue to play hard for, Dan Quinn. So even that game technically isn't a cakewalk. I mean, it is based on the record, but, they always, put up a fight. So that's just how I feel about that. So again, I think the NFC West is still open. I think, again, it's just how you look at it. If you look at it as if the NFC West is closed for business, and you're looking at it as more seed 5 or seed 6, fine, sure. Then this game is not a must-win against the Steelers. If you're looking at it, like you're trying to win the division, this is 100% a must-win. I don't think they can win a division losing a game to the Steelers, because I think they're going to lose to Baltimore, and there's a chance they could lose to another team. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I would agree. If you lose to the Steelers, you're digging yourself a hole as far as winning your division.
Yeah, and as far as the AFC goes, just getting your final thoughts on this. Do you think the Steelers are going to make the playoffs?
Ooh, that's a great question. What I've been telling people is we can afford to lose 2 more games. That's what I'm safe saying. So I think they can lose this game. I look at the schedule, I see the Rams. They can lose this game, and then they can drop another game later in the season. I forget who the team is, but maybe it's to the Ravens again. You can come out of this division in the AFC, this conference, 10-6, and I believe that's good enough to win at least a wild card spot. So that's why I go into this game, and I'm preaching. I'm kind of okay with the Steelers losing this game, because also just to feel better, because I know they're probably going to lose this game. So I'm not going to get too hung up and caught on the hope of them winning it somehow. I really think the Rams are just a superior team right now. I think, again, they're coming off that bye week. They're going to have that opportunity to really get these guys working together. And I think some things are going to click for them that just haven't been clicking yet. And it's going to culminate in a loss for the Steelers. So I think they can afford to lose this game and another one down the road. But if I was going to put money on it right now, if our defense keeps playing the way it's been playing, I do think that they will make the playoffs as a wild card.
Yeah, so I see it. It's definitely going to be hard for the Steelers, I think. But yeah, I think the win against the Colts is something that we need to give more credit to. Because I know even myself, you can get caught up in the whole, Jacoby Brissett got hurt. And I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, and I did get caught up in that, as you know, but at the end of the day, I mean,
Sure.
like you said, Hoyer didn't play horribly. And
Hoyer was good. Hoyer was good. Like, he was dropping dimes in the red zone. He had 3 red zone touchdowns. I mean, he came in and he balled out. He fell apart a little bit at the end when the pressure got to him, but it's not like he came in and he was the reason they lost that game.
I mean, that's exactly. So, I mean, the way I see it, I think, I think that the Steelers, they definitely deserve credit for that game. The missed field goal, I mean, yes, should he have made that 100%? But he didn't. And, we can talk about, they only won on a missed field goal. It kind of goes back to the Rams-Seahawks game. Well, they only won because the Rams missed the field goal. It's also, the Steelers put themselves in that position. You could say from either side, the position of putting themselves in a chance to lose the game, or you could say they put themselves in the position to have a chance at the end, to win the game. And that's how I would look at it, and I think I get, they're at home and all that, but the Colts are one of the best teams in football. I don't think people give them enough credit. And that was not an easy game.
Yeah, they're a well-coached
It was
team.
not an easy game.
Yeah.
Steelers got that done. So, I'd feel more worried if I was a Rams fan seeing the Steelers coming off a loss than beating the Colts. I know it's kind of one of those things. Is it really that big of a deal? I kind of do. I do think it's a big deal.
It is.
But the Steelers, they almost beat the 49ers earlier in the season. They outplayed Seattle. They should have beat Seattle. Okay, the only game that they really didn't deserve to win was the first game of the year.
Patriots.
That was just kind of, you throw that away. I mean, Roethlisberger,
it's the first game. It's the opening season. Anything goes first game of the season.
You've seen, what was it? Peyton Manning threw 7 touchdowns in one game. I mean, that was kind of a barometer showing you what they could do and what they ultimately did that year. But you just never know until you play. And I think, looking at the Steelers' schedule, the Browns, the Bengals, the Browns, the Cardinals, the Bills, the Jets, the Ravens. I mean, there's no reason if the Steelers drop this game to the Rams, they fall to 4-5. I think they beat the Browns 5-5, beat the Bengals 6-5, Browns again 7-5, Cardinals 8-5. I think they could beat the Bills 9-5, and then I think the Jets 10-5. And all of a sudden, if the Ravens don't take care of their
10-6,
if the Ravens don't take care of business, you could be looking at potentially stealing the division. So I agree with you. I don't think the Rams. If you're looking, I guess it's the same thing as the Rams, right? If you're looking at winning that division in the AFC, that maybe we've unfairly given to the Ravens, then yes, this is a must-win. But if you're, being more realistic and kind of, gravitating towards the idea 10-6, then this is not a must-win. Obviously, you're not going to complain if you win. But this will definitely be an interesting game for the Rams, though. I'm going to ask you, it sounds like a stupid question. Do you think they make the playoffs? But also, do you think they win the division?
That's tough, man. I definitely think they make the playoffs. Hands down, I'm not even questioning that. The division's tough, though, man. I mean, I totally buy into what you were saying earlier about, the 49ers not owning that division by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, this is the second half of the season, right? So we're at halftime. We just passed halftime. Teams can come out after halftime and look awful. Teams that were crushing the first half can come out the second half and totally get destroyed, right? So I would never sit here and say that the 49ers are going to have smooth sailing the rest of the way and just take this division. But if I had to put my money on it, I would say that the Rams are going to be a wild card team and the 49ers are going to have the division. But either way, I know the Rams are making the playoffs. Like, that's undebatable for me. And once they're in the playoffs, I mean, anything goes, right? They can make that run all the way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. With that last part, I think, the Rams, as long as they get into the playoffs, they can really do whatever. It would, obviously suck for the LA faithful to not have a home playoff game, which you would expect because this is a good enough team to have one. But If that was the case, then I mean, this team has already shown you, they beat Dallas and then they, beat New Orleans and then they went to the Super Bowl. I think this team has shown you, not this team, but this coaching staff and the players that are still there have shown you in the past, including Jared Goff, that, they went into New Orleans and no one gave them a shot. Okay. And they went into New Orleans, and
right.
that game could not have started off worse. There was a turnover on the first possession. It was just brutal.
Yep.
And then they somehow came away with a W because they actually outplayed the Saints in their home for the second half. We can talk about the pass interference call that's completely ruined officiating in 2019, but
yeah, I know. Oh my God, it's disgusting.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this over and over and over again. Reviewing pass interferences, it's like they have a God complex. Like, there's no way that officiating in the NFL,
it's the worst thing ever.
No way that they're going to admit that they were wrong. There's just no way.
Right, it's pointless. It's
and
so bad.
It's almost like that. Oh, okay, you ever play blackjack? So,
of course,
at the table, when they have like the lucky ladies, it's like that. It's like baiting you. So it's like you can use your money and put put something on the lucky ladies and hope that you hit 20s and you make a lot of money. But it's like on the off chance that ever happens. I mean, if you do that every hand, you're losing more often than you're winning. Whereas with the reviewing and everything, it's like you have a chance, I guess, because it's allowed to challenge pass interference. But it's like, when are you ever going to get that right? They never overturn pass interference. So
I haven't seen it called right once since being challenged. So it's pointless. Take it back.
There are other things they can do to the game that, I mean, I think the whole there's so much that needs to be done, reconstruction, all of that, of the rules and things like that. But we could go off on that, off on a tangent.
Hours.
But to close this thing out, I'm just going to ask you the question that I just feel like asking.
Mm-hmm.
What is your Super Bowl prediction?
All right. Ooh, that's a great question.
Now we'll have it on audio, so I'll have this sound bite. I'll send it to you, and when it happens, you can send it around to all your friends.
Great, can't wait. Oh God, I hate to do it because I'm a Steelers fan. We're holding on to that 6 Lombardi, and the Patriots tied us last year. But they're just too good of a team. They're too well coached. I got to go with the Patriots, and then I think the way that Russell Wilson is playing, your fans are going to hate this, but the way that Russell Wilson is playing right now, man, I think it's the Hawks, the Hawks and the Patriots. And then if I had to put in a secondary team who's just chomping at the bit in the NFC, I would say the Rams. But obviously, I'm not going to say either or, so I'm just going to say the Seahawks and the Patriots.
Well, I'm glad you didn't pick the Rams because I actually have the Rams and Patriots going back to after the Super Bowl. Yeah.
See, that would have been boring if I said. That would have been boring. So there we go.
Exactly.
Make it a little more
interesting. I think it's either going to be Rams and Patriots or Rams and Chiefs. Just real quick, wrapping this thing up. I'm just going to say this right now. People are forgetting about the Rams. They're 5-3. They haven't played anybody, all of that, whatever. And the teams they lost to, they got blown out by. I don't really agree with that. So let's just take a stroll back down memory lane when they beat the Carolina Panthers, who are a pretty good team in this league, and they beat them fully healthy. They had Cam Newton at the time. So they went to Carolina, a 1:00 game to start off their season, and they won. It wasn't easy, but they did get the job done. And I mean, despite the fact that they allowed over 200 total yards to Christian McCaffrey. You go to week 2, and I was at that game. The Rams dominated the Saints. They forced Drew Brees into a interception, and then Brees got hurt. And then Teddy Bridgewater came in, and they barely moved the football, and the Rams dominated the game. Now, I've heard over and over and over again how, well, the Rams beat the Saints without Drew Brees. Okay, and guess how many teams did that? 0. aside from the Rams, no one has
Right.
been able to beat Teddy Bridgewater.
Yep.
He went undefeated before Brees came back. So I find that really funny. Yeah, I
that
find
is
that
a weird
really
stat.
funny that people keep throwing
Yeah.
that, like, oh, that Rams win didn't matter because Brees got hurt. It's like, well, it didn't matter in Seattle, like when they went to Seattle and they beat Seattle, like,
Right.
and then week 3, you look at that game, and at the time, we were all kind of fooled a little bit. I wouldn't say we were fooled. You and I were a little bit souring on the Browns. But the Browns, anytime you go and you play on the road in prime time, you never know how that's going to go down. So they went to Cleveland, and they held it down in the final seconds of the game at the goal line. Huge goal line stand. It was John Johnson with the pass breakup. So they improved to 3-0, and no one's talking about the Rams. Everyone's like bummed because they wanted that narrative that was painted in the offseason that they were going to have a Super Bowl hangover, because I don't know what it is, but the media loves Super Bowl hangovers. And then the next game, everyone's like, oh, it's the Buccaneers, and everyone's
silly.
They're going to dominate. The Buccaneers were coming off of their second loss of the season, kind of they're back against the wall at 1-2, feeling like they don't really have much left if they lose this game. And playing a desperate team, I've said it over and over again, is the scariest thing in the NFL. So, they were coming off a loss where Daniel Jones, aka Danny Dimes, went off for 4 total touchdowns and won the game for the Giants over the Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers headed to LA, and Bruce Arians did what he used to do, and he beat the Rams. And it was an interesting game. The Rams had so many opportunities, and they scored 40 points, but they lost. So it was a 55-40 game, and that was their first loss of the year, and that was kind of like, whoa, what just happened? And a lot of Rams fans, felt like the sky was falling. You go to the Seahawks game. Seahawks, Rams, prime time in Seattle. The Rams, pretty much, in my opinion, I think they outplayed Seattle the majority of this football game. Russell Wilson's running ability, I think, really kept them in the game, and like he's done all year. And Seattle ended up winning because the Rams missed a field goal, 30-29.
Yep. Yeah, you shot yourself in your own foot there. You had that game right there for the taking.
I think the Rams actually made a mistake Greg Zuerlein is the man. I mean, he brought the Rams to the Super Bowl. Like, he makes kicks. Okay, he's got kahunas. But I will say this: the way that they slow played that last drive, in a drive where they really, again, they just had the Seattle's number. They were going down the field, and then they kind of slow played it, and they settled for the field goal. I think really set up a loss. I had a feeling they were going to lose the game when they did that. So they lose that game. They fall to 3-2. And then you look at the 49ers, and at this point, the 49ers are undefeated. They're 5-0, and everyone's talking about them. No one was talking about the Rams when they were 3-0 or when they were 5-0 last year. So the 49ers are getting all this buzz, and everyone's like, well, the 49ers aren't that good. And then they go to the Rams, and they beat the Rams pretty badly. It's only a 20-7 game, and I think that was really the eye-opener to me when I was watching the 49ers. Their offense couldn't put the Rams away, despite the fact the Rams did everything in their power to give that game to the 49ers. Jared Goff had 78 passing yards on 24 attempts. I mean, things like that, Tyler Higbee being your leading receiver at 25 yards, is not going to get the job done. So they lose that game. They fall to 3-3. All of a sudden, they've lost 3 straight for the first time in Sean McVay's era as a Rams head coach. And then the Falcons game comes at the right time. And, Alexis and I were on the podcast joking like, hey, anytime a team plays the Falcons, they fix whatever problem they have just by playing the Falcons. So sure enough, it looked like the Rams did that. They ended up winning 37-10. Really interesting coming into this game because they traded away their starting cornerback, Marcus Peters, for Kenny Young and a pick. And then they got Jalen Ramsey. So it was interesting there. Jalen Ramsey was awesome in that game. A lot of great things. Marquise Christian was phenomenal. And they won that game, in blowout fashion. And then the next game, they headed to London right before the bye against the Bengals, and they won 24-10 in a game where I felt as though they could have blown them out. People say that Sean McVay didn't want to run up the score on his his former co-worker, Zach Taylor.
Sure.
I don't really buy that.
Sure.
I think they just kind of got really conservative. Cooper Kupp had 220 yards at the half, and he finished with 220 yards. So, that was kind of weird.
Right.
But
it's also one of those London games.
Funky,
they always get a little
funky.
funky,
But in that game, a big thing happened. Brandon Cooks actually suffered a concussion, and if you don't know, I mean, he's had multiple concussions.
Yep.
And he's going to be out for this upcoming game against the Steelers. But heading into the end of the Rams schedule, you have the Steelers Rams, you have the Bears Rams, the Ravens Rams, Rams Cardinals, Rams Seahawks, Rams Cowboys, Rams 49ers, Rams Cardinals. It is not an easy schedule, but I will say this. They got it fixed, or whatever they needed to. They got fixed against the Falcons. Looks like they went back to their winning ways, winning 2 games against teams that they should beat. Mm-hmm. This weekend is huge. They absolutely have to beat the Steelers. Then they have a Sunday Night Football game against Mitch Trubisky and the Mighty Bears, who are 3-5, fighting to stay alive. And then another a back-to-back primetime game the week after with Lamar Jackson and company. So, there's a lot of opportunity here to really showcase what they are. And the next 3 games is going to tell us a lot about what the Los Angeles Rams 2019 season is about. And, I think the reason I just started from the beginning is I wanted to remind people this is a 3-0 football team. They lost 3 straight. People forgot about them. You know who else people forgot? The Kansas City Chiefs. And I'll tell you right now, Kansas City, who's sitting there with 3 losses, I believe they're 6-3. Don't be surprised if it's not the Patriots, it's not the Ravens, it's Kansas City. And don't be surprised if it's the Rams representing the NFC. I think those are the 2 teams that, could have played last year. If D Ford didn't go off sides, the Chiefs would have been in the Super Bowl. It's just those are the facts. But I think everyone likes to forget teams. And I think, everyone likes to pump up the teams that, shouldn't be pumped up. And who those teams are, we haven't really figured out yet. There's a lot of football left. I'm excited. And I think that's going to do it. So for Jake Ellenbogen, he is Adam Grego. This has been fun. This has been different. Definitely a different show than what you guys are accustomed to. I appreciate you, coming along for the ride and, and enjoy the game this weekend. We'll definitely be doing so as, ourselves and, Alexis.
We'll be texting the whole time. We'll be texting back and forth about every play, man. It's going to be fun.
But Alexis will be back next time. She again, just keep her in your thoughts. She's sick. She's not. She's okay. She's just very sick.
She's all right.
She'll live.
She'll live.
But again, thanks guys so much for tuning in, and take care.